Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you just got another cup of coffee, you're ready for another 45 minutes of fun. I am Dr. Shana Dodge, AFTD's Director of Research Engagement, and thank you for joining our breakout session, Sharing Your Experiences to Advance FTD Science. Research is absolutely key to everything AFTD hopes to accomplish. Our organizational mission is to improve the quality of life of people affected by FTD and drive research to a cure. But fulfilling this mission requires broad participation from the community. There are a lot of people investing in the science of FTD right now. We're at a very exciting time in FTD research. But no amount of funding can replace the volunteers needed for FTD breakthroughs. There are a lot of ways to participate in the science of FTD. Observational studies, you'll be hearing shortly about ALLFTD. Interventional studies that examine potential treatments, and we're very excited that there are clinical trials happening right now for FTD. You can complete surveys so that scientists can better understand the lived experience of FTD. Tissue and brain donations so scientists can better understand the causes of FTD. And people are often surprised to hear that sharing your personal experience with FTD is a key way you can participate in those FTD breakthroughs. Different people bring different types of expertise that are critical to moving the science of FTD forward. Over the last few decades, scientists and legislators have increasingly understood something families have known for a long time: the critical role of people with lived experience in advancing science. Each one of you, just by being yourself with your own personal history, is a key stakeholder in the research process. Why is that? Well, people who have lived with FTD or loved someone with FTD can help scientists better understand what it's like to live with FTD, what is most distressing and what meaningful change would actually look like, what research designs are practical from the perspective of people going through the research, what are acceptable benefits and risks, what the natural course of FTD looks like, perspectives on issues such as genetic testing and brain donation, and how to make the research participation experience a more positive one. And ideally, by connecting people with lived experience of FTD to researchers, that will produce more impactful research that better meets families' needs. So what does that look like? You'll hear in a moment from our speakers and our panelists about ways that you can actually participate in the science. It might look like completing surveys, participating in focus groups, sitting on advisory boards, providing testimony or speaking to research staff, reviewing research materials or proposed research designs, providing feedback on your experience with research. If after this session you're interested in the types of opportunities you heard, we encourage you to sign up as an AFTD volunteer. You can find information on volunteering on our website or out in the hallway at our volunteer booth. Researchers are often looking for specific types of people or specific stories to hear. And AFTD is actively seeking volunteers, and part of my job at AFTD is matching volunteers interested in research with research opportunities as they become available. These opportunities all differ, and again, you'll hear in a moment about some of those different opportunities. While opportunities to share your voice are often dictated by research needs, the FTD Disorders Registry is an opportunity for everyone. And with that, I'd like to introduce Sweatha Reddy, Project Manager at the FTD Disorders Registry. If you haven't registered yet, after all we've been saying all day, be sure to visit ftdregistry.org or the registry's booth in the hallway. Sweatha also serves as the liaison between the registry and the ALLFTD study. Sweatha will be followed by Dr. Ghoshal, who you heard from earlier this morning. Dr. Ghoshal is an associate professor of neurology and psychiatry at the Washington University School of Medicine and is a site principal investigator for the ALLFTD study.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you doing? A little bit louder? We're doing okay? We got the coffee? Good, okay. Well, thanks, Shayna, for that great introduction. So I'm going to talk to you about engaging in research through the registry today. So what is a patient registry? A patient registry is a tool for facilitating research. It provides a flexible platform for developing research, and it is really important in rare diseases such as FTD. More specifically, a patient registry is a system to collect and securely store standardized information about a group of people, usually focused on a specific diagnosis or condition. Patient registries exist for all types of diagnoses and conditions. For example, cancer, kidney transplant, people that are waiting for a kidney transplant or willing to donate, there's registries for them. And most recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, registries were set up to understand how the disease was being transmitted to one person to another and the efficacies of the vaccines. So recognizing the importance registries can play in research, the FTD Disorders Registry was founded in March 2015 by AFTD and the Bluefield Project. It gained its nonprofit status in March 2016, and it was launched to the public in March of 2017. The mission of FTD Disorders Registry is to facilitate and advance research into the spectrum of FTD disorders and to accelerate the developments of treatments by providing tools and resources that, 1, promote and support research participation, 2, amplify the voice of patients and families' lived experience, and 3, enable access and sharing data with researchers. There are several reasons to join the FTD Disorders Registry. You've been hearing them all day, but I want to really drive them home through this slide. The first reason is you get to share your insights into FTD and improve the knowledge of FTD and guide improvements for research, design, and clinical care. Who knows FTD better than you? Second is to participate in research and advance the science from the comfort of your home. This is all done online, so you can participate in research through easy access. And 3 is to stay informed about FTD research, including when studies may be recruiting for people like you. So how do you enroll? You go to ftdregistry.org and you will see this image on the home page, and you select who you are. Are you the individual diagnosed with FTD? Are you the biological family member? Or are you the spouse, caregiver, or friend? Select who you are to move on. I want to emphasize the FTD Disorders Registry is not for one specific type of disorder, but it's for the entire umbrella. So if you are one of those, it can be any one of those diagnoses can join the registry. So once you've selected who you are, you're going to go through a couple of steps and provide us with some information. First, you're going to read our terms and conditions. You're going to hear about our privacy policy. Then we ask for some of your personal information, such as your name, address, and contact information. And then the next step is what we call your legal information at birth. So on the previous step, maybe you provided that your name is John, but legally it's Jonathan. And then we ask for where you were born and some other information that's used to generate an NIH GUID. A GUID is basically a code that masks all of your private information so that nobody knows who you are. Then you can select whether if you are the FTD diagnosed individual, you'll tell us a little bit about your caregiver. And if you're the caregiver or biological family member, you'll tell us about the FTD affected person. And then next, you'll create an account, which is pretty simple enough. You'll create a username and password. And then you have 2 options. You can select to be a contact account or a research account. There's a little bit of a difference between both of these. The contact account is open to both domestic and international participants. You get informational updates and you get quarterly newsletters. In contrast, if you sign up for the research registry account, it's only open to US and some Canadian provinces because it's dictated by IRB. You will sign an informed consent saying you are willing to participate in research and what that entails, and then you get access to our research surveys. What 3 items you see there in the contact registry, especially the informational updates and quarterly newsletters, you get those as a research account as well. So what kind of data are we collecting? What are we asking you to participate in? What do those surveys look like? So we have 3 surveys currently. The first survey is what we call a demographic survey, and it helps us collect basic information about you and learn a little bit more about which diagnosis you have. The second survey is what we call the research readiness survey. It reflects your willingness to participate in research, what motivates you to participate in research, what are some of the barriers that might prevent you from participating in research. And the third is what we call our disease impact survey. This is your opportunity to share your lived experiences with FTD. What impact has it been having on you over the years? I want to emphasize that first bullet. All the information we collect, whether it's through your account when you're enrolling or any of the information you provide through these surveys, it is protected. Your identity will never be revealed outside of the registry. But what this data does help us do, it helps us build a clearer picture of the impact of FTD on a person. It helps us collect data to raise awareness, improve access to diagnosis and resources, and of course, advance the science. And it's also an opportunity to give participants information about trials that might be right for them. Then we take all of this data, and aggregate de-identified data is shared with the public via the website, newsletter, or publications. But what does it mean to be aggregate and de-identified? What does that look like? Here's an example. Right now, we have over 6,000 people in the registry. Of those 6,000 people, 24% are FTD affected, 43% are biological family members, and 33% are spouse or caregivers. That research survey that I talked about, willingness to participate in research, taking everyone's responses, we've created this infographic to show what motivates people to participate in research and what are some of the things they're interested in participating in. So now I want everyone to take out your phones, tablets, laptops, and go to this web address, pollev.com/Sweatha Reddy 704. And I want to show you what it looks like to participate in research. So I'll give you a second here to go to here. And if you don't catch it, don't worry, on the next slide it's there too. But it's pollev.com/my name, Sweatha Reddy 704. All right, let's go. So here's your question. Once you log into that web address, and like I said, it's there at the top of the screen, the same question you see on the slides here is what you should see. And as people select your answers, we will see what the winner is. So at what age were you or your loved one diagnosed with FTD? It looks like 40 to 59 is the most popular. Oh, changes. Ooh. Going back and forth. Still looks like it's 40. Oh, this is fun. People are deleting, changing answers. So great. So this is an example of us trying to understand when were you diagnosed with FTD or your loved one, right? It gives us a great way to find that out, and quickly. Next question. So this should have flipped for you too. You should be seeing the next question on your device. What would you do genetic testing for FTD if offered for free by an established nonprofit like the FTD Disorders Registry? Your options are yes, I'm interested. Yes, I've already tested. No, I am not interested. Not sure. And it looks like the majority, this was a cleaner choice. It looks like a lot of people are interested. That's really good to hear. Very nice. All right, last question, everyone. What resources did you use to help care for yourself or your FTD diagnosed loved one? And you can select all that apply. You don't have to just pick one answer. You can pick multiple here. Looks like conferences. Well, we're all at a conference, so that's great. Family and friends, yes. Medical professionals, researchers, yes, that makes sense. Oh, it's only letting you pick one? Sorry, technical glitch. It's only letting you pick one, but it still looks like among those conferences, yeah, everything seems to be like conferences still. Oh, evened out. Great. So there's an example of how you can participate in research through the registry. I'm happy to share that the registry is evolving. We have a, come fall 2023, we're gonna have a new user interface. We're gonna have custom surveys that are based on your diagnosis and your symptoms that you're experiencing and align resources that match. We'll have expanded data collection through a new research interface that are all driven by the same nonprofit mission, which is advancing FTD research and amplifying the participant's voice. With your privacy being at the core of this. All our changes does not mean any changes to your privacy. Your privacy will always be protected. So come visit us at the exhibitors booth. We can help you enroll in the FTD Disorders Registry. And if you're already a participant, thank you so much for your participation. Look for those upgrades coming this fall. And if you have any feedback, please come share it with us at the booth. Thank you.
And much like we tag team in the real world, we'll tag team here as well. So you already heard, I'm going to help close out part of the day, I guess, as I help start off the morning. So we're going to talk about how specifically you can get involved in research. FTD Registry is at least the least we would ask for you to do. I think it's a great place to hear about what's coming down the pipeline and so forth. But in terms of what's already, we'll take a little look back to look ahead. I mentioned it this morning briefly in passing, a couple of studies that started in the 2014 through 2019 cycle, one called Artful and one called Lefties. I do not name them, I just report on them. Artful up top was for all comers in terms of sporadic FTD, so you did not have to come from a family with a family history of FTD. And Lefties was the hereditary forms aspect of those studies. So what were these all about? They ran for 5 years. So let's talk about the ask that was entailed in probably the more involved of the two with Lefties. You can see it was a 5-year funded cycle. It should be clear that was funded by the NIH. And we can see that it took a little bit of starting time. We had a visit 1, a visit 2, visit 3 situation for the most part. These were, yes, from the big 3 genes that we often talk about in FTD space, the tau gene, progranulin, and C9. And we asked for people, much like the registry, you could be a person with the mutation. So everyone has a gene. We're going to get that clarified today. Everyone has genes, as to whether or not you have a mutation. So if you were a mutation carrier and had symptoms, mutation carrier, no symptoms, or a sibling from a family, not a mutation carrier and therefore no symptoms. We're interested in all that, right? So we want to know how siblings are doing in those families every bit as much as individuals who are affected. And specifically in terms of what the ask had to be, we'd have you come for about 2.5 days. We'd ask you to do some clinical assessments, ranging from a pretty detailed interview, again, in the theme of you telling us your story, capturing those through a variety of surveys, Q&A, paper and pencil testing, and then in addition to that, an MRI, some blood work, and then spinal fluid testing. Don't have to do the spinal fluid testing if you don't want to. We strongly encourage it. And then we had a little bit of a rebrand. So the grant is a 5-year cycle. We get into the next 5 years. You see 5+. The NIH acknowledged that certainly we were slowed up during COVID, so we are now funded through 2025. It's called ALLFTD and means every bit of that kind of acronym. So this was now all comers under the same umbrella. Everyone comes through the same pipeline, whether you are sporadic, just one-off FTD, no family history, or if you have family history. Everyone comes in under the same roof. And we learned quite a lot of numbers here, but I can point out that we have ALLFTD therefore encompassed both Artful and Lefties participants. We didn't leave them out in the wind. They got folded in moving forward. So 2,400 participants, something over 4,000 visits. And you see with each of those, we have visits associated with MRIs, blood samples, and spinal fluids. This is a robust data set. So we hear that we think we have a lot of data, but we don't. We're actually getting to a lot of data. You may wonder, where do these participants come from? Who are these people who are willing to go through 2.5 days worth of testing? So this is some recent data that's been pulled from the study. So there's metrics, basically you do the census every 10 years, and from that we can kind of identify where people come from. It's not perhaps surprising. There's a rank order from left to right of major metropolises, major cities, if you will, where academic centers may be, to more rural communities. So let's take a look at our sites and what the breakdown looks like. So in blue or blue-gray is the metropolitan cities, and then the next breakdowns are micropolitan, small town, rural, and this has to do with kind of commuting patterns to major urban centers. So again, not perhaps surprising that academic centers are often in big cities, and so the number of participants are probably within X number of miles of that center. Well, you'll see that it's not restricted in that manner, where one of the sites actually has a bit more of a rural encatchment, if you will. So you're like, fine, Dr. Ghoshal, you've told us a lot about these studies. You've told us how we can get involved. You've told us how we can share our stories kind of systematically through these studies. So I'm jazzed. I'm motivated. I want to get on board. What do I do? Guess what? There's probably a site near you. So while we'd be happy to see you here at Washington University, there are a number of sites now through the country, 26 active sites with at least, I think, another 1 or 2 kind of coming on board. But there's probably something fairly close to you to be able to get involved with. The benefit of this is we partner with FTD Registry. The GUID that Sweatha mentioned was also generated in these studies. And that basically, I kind of explained as kind of the Wizard of Oz world. So your data is de-identified. It doesn't track back to you, but it remains exceedingly useful on the research side of things. And so those numbers I was able to provide you in aggregate come from GUIDs as well. Also means that should you move from site to site, we don't encourage site hopping, but if life happens and you're moving to another part of the country, there's probably another location we can get you attached to. And the kind of protocols are all the same through and through. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'd now like to introduce our esteemed panel of speakers to talk about their experiences sharing their FTD stories with the research world. So I will welcome them all up, and as they're coming up, I'll give you some brief introductions. Deb Scharper, who's coming up first, is a longtime AFTD volunteer and current AFTD ambassador. She has a loved one with FTD and has been highly active over the years raising money for AFTD's mission, advocating on behalf of FTD families and leading a support group in her home state. Next, we have Adrian. Adrian is a former corporate attorney and published author who founded a gymnastics club in Austin, Texas in 2014. Adrian has several family members impacted by FTD, including his father, who had behavioral variant FTD. Adrian is joined on his left by his mother, Susan Eissler, a former AFTD board member and current AFTD ambassador. Susan has been an AFTD volunteer for 16 years. And finally, we welcome Terry Walter, who is also an AFTD ambassador from California. Her husband passed away from FTD in 2007. Terry is also an active AFTD volunteer, holding numerous fundraisers and meet and greet events over the years. Thank you all for joining us today. So I'd like to start, I kind of mentioned, and you saw that red diagram, that there's different ways to kind of share your voice with researchers. And I know you have all participated in different initiatives with companies and with researchers. And I thought maybe we could go down the line. Maybe we'll start with Deb. I'd love to hear you talk just briefly about what are some of the initiatives that you've participated in where you've been able to kind of share your voice to advance science.
Last year at this conference, I got together with a lector, and I just shared my story with them, and my daughter was with us. And from that, they invited me to come out and talk to the scientists and with their whole company, and I explained our disorder and how it affected us. And from there, they decided that they wanted us to do the Learn FTD and do a little 5-minute clip about our lives. So that's one way that we did it.
Check. Oh, got it. All right. Yes, so we've done a number of different things. Our family, starting with my dad and then continuing to my brothers and I, have participated in annual studies at UCSF, which is a beautiful vacation every year. I'm going down there, and the folks are wonderful, so it's a nice stop every year so that we can talk to them about all the things that are going on. And my oldest brother, who's 10 years older than me, is now at the very, very advanced stages of the disease. So we've done that, and then, as you mentioned, wrote a couple of books, Felony Dementia and Reason of Insanity. I practiced criminal law for a bit, so I had to cue that into the novels. But book number 3 is underway. I'm working on it this summer. So publishing those books, I think is really important to just keep getting the word out there to as many people as possible, so that as many people get these multiple touches from news and books and this and that, and they can get correctly diagnosed and they can become a part of these studies. So I think that's important. And then something that was really exciting is started the gymnastics gym through the contact of one of the gymnasts, and their parents got connected to Aviato Bio. And so we went out to New York a few months ago to film, and they were part of a documentary called The Disruptors on all the new companies that are creating really new and innovative treatments. So that was a really fun way to participate in the discussion and help push things further along.
Excuse me. Another opportunity which I've participated in was the congressionally directed research program, which was really interesting. The Congress funds a great deal of money every year specifically toward FTD research, and researchers can apply for grants. And what they do is they have a group of scientific reviewers, but they also have what they call a consumer reviewer, someone who is actually familiar with the disease and living the disease as a caregiver, or a person with the disease. And so you get to go and read the whole grant, and then the scientific reviewers review it to see if it could actually succeed, if it has the funding and the manpower and whatever that's necessary to make it worth the government's money to invest in. And the consumer reviewer is tasked with determining if this research was successful. Would we care? Would the community find it a worthwhile investment of time and money? And so not only do I get to look at it and say, well, would this really mean something? And also I have a chance to explain to the scientists in the room why I care about it and why I think it's significant and what we're dealing with. So it's a win-win situation, because the scientists get to see that the work they do is so important to people, and it matters what they do, what decisions they make in that room. And I got to see how very much work the scientists put into each step of the way. It's exciting work for them, but it's very tedious. And I think it appears that it uplifts them to know that every day all this work they're doing is so meaningful to all of us. So it's a great opportunity.
Hello, I'm Terry Walter, and as Shana said, my late husband passed away in 2007 from FTD and ALS. The Walter family has had 5 family members. His 2 brothers, a mother and an aunt, all passed from FTD and ALS. At one point, the 3 brothers were all in various stages. The oldest, Phil, was at his end of days. Mike, the middle brother, was in the middle of FTD and ALS, and then Stephen was just beginning. 5 family members with FTD and ALS, and all 5 were different percentages, you could say, that had FTD and ALS, some more ALS, some more FTD. Mike and Stephen were dedicated to doing research as much as they could and participating. And it's really a family pride that the C9 ORF72 gene was found because of the research that they participated in. So I'm very passionate about research and how important it is. And in the last few months, I was able to talk to Wave Life Science in Boston about the FTD and the ALS, whom I did meet last year in Baltimore at the conference. And then in December, I went over to Verge Genomics and spoke to their research about the FTD and ALS. Just the Walter family has just been committed to bringing an awareness and a cure to FTD.
Thank you. You all have very busy lives. So this question's for anyone who wants to jump in first. What drove you to take time out of your busy day to meet with researchers or meet with funders to share your story.
I will say, I don't have, oh, I'm sorry. I'm driven for, and as my sister-in-law, because of our children. I have 2 daughters and 3 granddaughters. She has sons and grandchildren, and Phil, the oldest brother, had 4 daughters, and there's about 8 grandkids. So all of our kids are at risk. The C9 is a dominant gene with a 50% chance. So we are driven to move research and information about this. The oldest kids are in their 50s. My daughter's 44, 45, and I would say most of the Walters started with some kind of symptoms in their late 40s, and most of them passed away in their late 50s and by 60. So the time frame for me, so it's not a job, it's a passion, and I'm here until the end.
I would say the same for me. Yes, looking at my grandchildren, and I want to spare them for this, and also all the other people who come across this disease unexpectedly. Yeah, there's only one way, and that's to participate in. Also realizing that because there are not a lot of us to participate in research, it's so important to get everyone who's able to participate so that the drug companies will realize there's a market, there's a need, there's a demand, and the only way they'll realize it is if we stand up.
I'll say that any family member that, my kids, they started the ALLFTD program as soon as they could. My daughter was 19 when she first started getting and going to Mayo Clinic and getting all of the research done. And it's hard on her and hard on my son to do it. The week before we go, they're high strung and you're just like, ah. But then when they come back and say you're good for another year, then it seems to then calm their nerves for another year. But I can't imagine being them, knowing that they may have the C9orf, and when will it come in effect and start?
One thing that inspires me to go out to San Francisco and do the programs with Aviato Bio, I've done a couple with them now, is contributing to the science, obviously, but for my kids, all of my nieces and nephews, all of my cousins, some of whom are more or less engaged in the research, if I can be helpful to the research, but if I can also stay closely connected to the research, when things become available, my kids will be able to have access to it. My nieces and nephews, my cousins, stay as close as I can, help the community, and in turn, we'll be close to it and we'll know when things are coming out and we can jump in and participate when things come out. So I want to stay as close to all of us friends as possible. Let's do this thing together.
Thank you. I'm curious if any of these experiences have changed your perception of researchers or of pharmaceutical companies.
Well, I just was really impressed with the scientists whom I met, how young and energetic and smart they are. It's very exciting and makes me feel very hopeful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I guess another question I have is, what impact do you think these initiatives, participating, sharing your voice, appearing in movies and all kinds of things, what impact do you feel like that's having on the science and the scientists, or what impact has it had on you to sit there in front of strangers and talk about your life?
I'll say for me, it was empowering. It was making sure that my loved one's life is not forgotten. He is now 52 and lives in a care facility, and I had to put him in at the age of 44. And you're heartbroken when you have to close that door behind him, and I have to go on with my life, and he's in that facility. and we go and visit and we hang out and everything, and then you see the decline each and every time you go, and I just don't, I do it to honor him. And when I wake up each day, I don't want to be complaining, because guess what? I get to wake up, I get to walk out that door, and I can use my voice to make sure that he's not forgotten.
I would add that one thing that I think it has helped me do in participating in these studies at UCSF and talking to other people about it is feel more comfortable in some of the very difficult situations that I've been in recently as I'm getting closer to having symptoms. One of the big ones was I started a gymnastics gym. There were hundreds of kids who are in my care, hundreds of families at the gym, and hitting age 40, okay, it's time to go ahead and transfer it on to the other coaches, and explaining that to all of the families through the email and everyone coming to talk to me. That's a very awkward situation, but I feel like having participated in the research, calmly, methodically, understanding what's going on, what are the things that are necessary to keep myself healthy and pass on responsibilities, I felt like that helped me make particularly that decision and go ahead and hand off that responsibility to the next coaches. I think that helped me do that.
I would say it is driving me even harder to bring an awareness more to FTD. In talking with the researchers, it's hard to get participants because sometimes time the diagnosis come, the patient are not able to participate. And they also seem to be finding the earlier the diagnosis, the better they are at stopping it or preventing it. So for me, it's just bring that awareness to the physicians, to the medical field, so that early diagnosis is there to help not just the patients, so families are not so destroyed by this.
Luckily, we've heard a lot about the ALLFTD study and how to enroll in that. I'm curious, outside of the ALLFTD study, how did you find out about these opportunities to share your voice with scientists?
Mine was actually through the conference last year. Of course, I hadn't been for a few years, COVID and just things going on in my life. And so I really wasn't aware of all the research, even though I was still actively fundraising and doing some things with FTD. But last year just really set my motivation. And up till that point, my daughters really did not want much to do with it. 10 years ago, they said, so Mom, we get tested for the gene, they found it, what are we going to do now? There's nothing being done. So every day they would worry if their leg hurt, am I getting ALS? Or if they forgot something, is FTD coming? But now they're ready to kick in and come with me and participate in all the research and help where they can, because there is so much hope.
My participation in UCSF was one of the first things, and it was really because my mother had brought my father there, and that's how they started the research, and because she had been participating in AFTD and participating in the research. So, as with most of the other things in my life, it's all my mother's fault.
I guess another question I have before we close is, for many of you, sharing your experiences has been done in kind of a public setting. You know, it's going on the internet, it's being broadcast, and I'm curious what that's been like for you, and if there are any things people should consider before embarking in one of these initiatives.
I will say for me, it's been a healing process to tell the story. I know most of you, in the beginning you hide what's going on, and when it was just so hard, and when it was done, I just repressed all those feelings and just sort of, tried to move on. But with telling my story and opening up, it's been a beautiful healing experience. And two, it gives me a chance to honor Stephen's memory, because he was such an incredible person. So I think it's been helpful, very helpful.
My husband used to say about soccer that if you if the ball hits you in the head, it really hurts. But if when it comes to you, you proactively hit it, it doesn't hurt. So this is sort of the same thing for me. It's instead of just giving up under it or getting into it. Being proactive makes it such a more positive experience.
I'm in the medical field, and so to me, knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, 100%. And coming out and telling our story also has helped me grow as a person, not hiding it anymore. And being able to connect with other families is just amazing. I do a support group once a month, and just being able to be everybody's cheerleader, and then they cheer me on if I'm having a bad day. It's just awesome to be open and honest.
Well, I want to thank all of you. How about a round of applause for these panelists? That concludes our panel discussion. Thank you again for sharing your insight and expertise. We're now going to take our last break of the day, and we will reconvene here at 4:30 Central Time for our final session. In-person attendees should meet us back here in the Landmark Ballroom at 4:30. See you then.